Have you ever thought about like how to be when you really love Jesus? Like what exactly you're supposed to do? Keep watching this video and find out. Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie Odili and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're just joining me for the first time, my name is Stephanie and I'm here to do the will of the one who sent me, which is to know him and make him known to me, to you, and the rest of the world. And if you're returning, thank you so much for sticking around all this time and I hope you've been enjoying the videos. Okay, so today I want to talk about exactly what to do if you love Jesus. Like if you love Jesus, gather here. Like this is our round table talk. Okay, so we're looking at John chapter 21 from verse 15 to 25. John the Gospel from chapter 21 from verses 15 to 25. And I read, when they had finished eating, that's the disciples, Jesus said to Simon Peter, this is also after his resurrection, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said, you know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him for the third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things and you know that I love you. Now I'm going to stop here for now. Christ took the time to ask Peter this question 3 times. Again, and Peter was right. God knows all things. And God doesn't ask us questions so that he can know the answer. He needs to know the disposition of our hearts. When God asked Adam, where are you? He knew where Adam was. He knew what Adam was doing. But it was Adam's response to him that let him know exactly the state of mind that he was in. So when Christ asked Peter this question, he knew exactly what he wanted to know and how Peter was going to respond. But Peter responded with, Haba now, God, like paraphrasing, you know I love you. And you know all things to know that I do love you. And the questions that Christ asked him, was, if you love me, feed my lamb. That's the first question and answer. Second one, if you love me, take care of my sheep. Now, Jesus' third answer says, and I read from verse 17b to 18, Jesus said, feed my sheep. For very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will dress you and lead you where you don't want to go. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, follow me. Peter turned and saw that the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them. This was the one who had leaned back against Christ at the supper and said, Lord, who is going to betray you? When Peter saw him, he asked, Lord, what about him? Jesus answered, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You must follow me. Because of this, the rumor spread among the believers that this disciple will not die. But Jesus did not say he will not die. He only said, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? And then, that disciple ends with, this is the disciple who testifies to these things and who wrote them down. We know that his testimony is true. Jesus did many other things as well. If every one of them were written down, I suppose that even the whole world would not have enough room for the books that would be written. Now, I felt the need to add the other verses, even if it didn't relate to love, because it shows the character of Jesus and the disciples that he was with, his apostles. They were still human beings again, like I say, and human beings have human being feelings. Peter has just been asked by God 3 times if he loves him. And it felt like for every time he responded, Christ wasn't so convinced. Then he turns to who he thinks Christ loves and says, what about him? Think about a scenario with your siblings. Your parents is admonishing you or talking to you. You and your siblings are in the same category, and you're like, why aren't you asking her that question? Why aren't you asking him that question? And Christ's response is, what is it to you? My interpretation of that is, you have to run your race. You have to do what has been called for you to do. You can't look left or right. But this pastor is doing this. But why is that pastor doing that and I can't do that? It's not up to you. Why does that pastor have his own dreads? Why can't I dread my own hair? Look, everybody has their own. What is it to you? And now I'm going backward to the main point. Like, what is it to you that someone is doing something differently or being different, or is a different disposition or a different assignment to what you have been called? The apostles received that, and that's how rumors started spreading. John won't die, this person won't die. But that wasn't what Christ said. His focus was to shift Peter back to his message. And what was his message? Feed my sheep. Take care of my lamb, and again, feed my sheep. We know that Christ is the good shepherd and we are his sheep. So basically, the people, feed them the accurate word of God. This is not a time for false doctrine. This is not the time for telling people things because you want to tell them things. Is it rooted in the word of God? If you're going to preach salvation, preach what Christ and the apostles have said. It is by faith that we are saved. It is by the grace of God that we are saved, not because we did anything righteous. Feed my sheep. And what do you feed the sheep? You feed the sheep the word. Look at Psalm 23 when David talks to God as his shepherd. He leads me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. That is the way to feed the sheep. Lead them to the path of God's righteousness for God's sake, for God's glory to be, for God's name to be glorified. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Teach people, feed them that if God is your shepherd, you want nothing because you have everything in him. Not material things. You have everything you need in him. He restores our soul. Feed them that word. God restores our soul when our soul is aching, when our soul is hurting, when our soul is failing. And then Christ added, for very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you did all of this, but when you're older, someone will dictate all these things for you. Do you know what that means? Yes, it says, indicate the kind of death that Peter would take. And as a believer, it also indicates for us that where we are now, we can do all that needs to be done. You can see heroes of the faith, like the attitude towards evangelism isn't how it was when they were younger. When you're younger, you can serve God well, with your voice, with your talent, with your skill, with your communication, with everything and anything you have. Serve God, and you serve God by loving him with all your heart. And if you love him, you feed his sheep. So if you love Jesus and you've gathered here, my brothers and my sisters, the one thing you're going to do is feed his sheep. And that starts from you. Feed yourself with his word so that you may feed others. Grow in his word that you may point others to the right direction. It is not to you what others are doing. Do what he has told you to do. It is not to you to know when or how or talk about anybody else. Follow through on the assignment that he has called and has given you. If he's giving the assignment of just giving out tracts, say, well, but why can't I go on Instagram? Why can't I do ABC? If you love him, feed his sheep. Feed yourself and feed others the word of God. I hope that this message and this video blessed you. And if you did, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you next week. Bye.